The year is 1959, somewhere deep within the Ural Mountains in Russia. 9 skiers are about to embark on what will be their final journey. Their bodies would be found strewn across a mountain pass days later, displaying injuries that defied explanation. And to this day, the circumstances surrounding their deaths remain unknown. This is the terrifying true story of Dyatlov Pass. Our story begins with Yuri Yudin. Yuri was a 23-year-old student from the Yuri Polytechnic Institute located in the Ural Oblast of Russia. In January of 1959, Yuri decided he was going skiing. He invited 8 of his closest friends, all fellow students at the institute. They were going to spend 2 weeks skiing, drinking, and having fun. Yuri's group consisted of both men and women. There was Zina Kolmogorova, Rustem Sloboda, Ludmila Dubanina, Zoya Kosmodomyanskaya, Yuri Krivonishenko, Nikolai Thibault, Semyon Zolotaryev, Alexander Kolovatov, and Igor Dyatlov. On January 1959, the group left the institute and took a train to a town called Idel. From there, they took a couple of trucks until they reached the village of Vitsai. This is where their journey began. On January, they arrived at the village of Vitsai and met up with some friends, including a local ski instructor named Galya. After getting acquainted with their new guide, the group set out into the snowy woods towards their destination, Otorten. A few hours later, the group set up camp at the edge of a sparse wooded area. They'd chosen an excellent spot, one that was well hidden and close to a nearby river. In the evening, the group celebrated with a nice dinner, drinks, and music. It was an excellent start to their trip. The next morning, the group woke up early, packed up, and continued their journey. That evening, they set up camp again. But this time it was on the slopes of a mountain known as K2. Once again, the group enjoyed a lovely dinner before retreating to their tents. And that's where things took a turn for the worst. In the middle of the night, something happened that we may never know of. All we have are theories. One theory suggests that a sudden avalanche forced its way through the mountains and crashed down onto the unsuspecting campers, killing them instantly. Another theory suggests that the group was awoken in the middle of the night by an intense storm and were forced to flee their tent to escape the blizzard. Whatever really happened, it led the group to abandon their camp in the middle of the night and head into the dark, unforgiving wilderness. The next morning, the tents were discovered empty, but there was no sign of the group anywhere. All that was found was a single ski. At first, the authorities believed that the group had simply run off into the forest or perhaps taken a wrong turn and gotten lost in the wilderness. But as days turned into weeks and still no trace of the group could be found, the search party grew worried. Finally, on February 1959, 2 weeks after the group was last seen alive, their bodies were found scattered around the mountainside. When the search party first stumbled upon the bodies, they made a grim discovery. All 9 members of the group were dead. But that wasn't the only disturbing thing. All of them seemed to have died from different causes. Some showed signs of severe trauma, while others seemed relatively unharmed. When examining the bodies, it became clear that the group had been dead for at least 3 days. Their clothes were torn, and their faces were contorted in expressions of pain and terror. As news of the tragedy spread, people began to speculate about what could have caused such a horrific scene. One of the most popular theories is that the group had been killed by an avalanche. An avalanche certainly would have been powerful enough to cause the level of damage that was found on the bodies, but there was one major problem with this theory. The area had been hit by several avalanches in the weeks prior to the group's arrival. Each one had been loud enough to wake anyone who was sleeping. Yet none of the bodies showed any signs of trauma consistent with being caught in an avalanche. Another popular theory is that the group had been caught in a blizzard and in their panic to escape had become disoriented and perished in the snow. But this theory also had its problems. First of all, the area had been hit by a blizzard on the same day the group was found dead, and none of the bodies showed any signs of hypothermia. Secondly, several of the bodies were found lying face down in the snow, which would not have been the case if the group had been in a blizzard. To make matters even more bizarre, several of the bodies were missing body parts. One girl was found without her tongue, another without eyes, and several others without their limbs. This led to speculation that the group had been attacked by wild animals. However, when the bodies were examined, It was determined that the missing body parts had not been removed by animals, but instead by human hands. Someone had mutilated the corpses. But why? Was it an animalistic frenzy or a ritualistic act? To this day, the mutilation remains unexplained. Adding to the mystery is the fact that several of the bodies were found far away from the rest of the group. One man was found 186 meters from the others, and another was found 400 meters away. What could have caused them to wander so far away from the group before dying? Adding to the bizarre nature of the case, when the authorities tried to transport the bodies back to the village, one of the corpses suddenly began bleeding. As the investigators were loading the body onto a truck, blood began to pour out of the man's leg. This was despite the fact that the man had been dead for several weeks. Could this be evidence that the man had been buried alive? While investigating the site of the camp, the authorities discovered a pair of footprints. They collected the prints and sent them to an expert in Moscow to determine who could have made them. The expert concluded that the prints were made by boots that were worn by a person weighing between 70 and 75 kilograms. But this didn't make sense since the lightest person in the group weighed over 80 kilograms. The footprints were a complete mystery. As the years passed, more and more theories began to emerge. Some believed that the group had been the victims of a secret military experiment, while others believed that they were the victims of a crazed killer. There was even a theory that the group had been killed by supernatural forces. These theories were all unproven. In 2019, however, a new investigation was launched, and with it came new evidence. DNA testing revealed that the group had not been murdered, but rather had died from traumatic injuries consistent with a large-scale disaster. This evidence supported the avalanche theory once again. But there is still one piece of the puzzle that does not fit: the strange markings found on the bodies. Could the markings be evidence that the group was the victim of a secret military experiment gone awry? Or could it be proof of a crazed killer stalking the mountains? Or are we truly dealing with a haunting paranormal event here? Maybe. We will likely never know what really happened to the group at Dyatlov Pass. And now, I want to hear your thoughts on the case. What do you think happened to the group? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and leave a like. If you want to see more videos like these, thank you for watching.